Uh, so, the last slide of the previous theme, being a Kshatriya is difficult, contemporary parlance. In the statecraft of contemporary times, this is the theme repeatedly heard by us: law and order and human rights. I am a police officer, I have to maintain law and order. And when I maintain law and order, if I don't maintain law and order, if riots keep going on, if there is still an attack on Starlight factory being burned, somebody burning the bus, something happening on the roads, people say you are not maintaining law and order. But to control, if a rubber bullet is fired, if a small child who is deliberately brought as a human shield by the terrorist is attacked, immediately all YouTube is filled with the videos. Human rights violation. So this law and order and human rights balance. Every police officer, every police constable, right from the constable to DGP level, everyone is facing this today, the balance between law and order and human rights. When they face this, they say what Yudhishthira said, oh, this Kshatriya life. In Udyoga Parva, during Bhagavad Dhyana Parva, while talking to Sri Krishna, while giving his message to Sri Krishna, this is what Yudhishthira says. Oh, this Kshatriya life. I don't want this Kshatriya life at all. But what can I do? Paradharmo bhayavahaha. I cannot take up any other dharma. I am supposed to live only this life, Kshatriya life. You will realize how contemporary that comment is, how contemporary that lamentation is, how contemporary that pain of Yudhishthira is, only when you talk to police officers today. Only when you talk to BSF Jawans in Kashmir. Only when you talk to CRPF Jawans in Kashmir. And only when you talk to all the law and order maintaining people all over the country, you will realize, you will be hearing Yudhishthira every time. Yudhishthira is saying this. Same thing is being said today. Oh, how difficult it is. If I do this, if LTT is not eliminated, everyone laughs. India said it had huge army, it sent IPKF there. What did IPKF do? It returned without any achievement. And Sri Lanka boasts of a big air force, big army. What did it do? It could not even do anything to LTT. If LTT is eliminated, immediately, you eliminate? You eliminate people just like that? You kill even V. Prabhakaran just like that? His son is shot. That is violence, human rights violation. If he eliminates, elimination is wrong. If you don't eliminate, they say you are useless. Right? So this lamentation of Yudhishthira, oh, this Kshatriya life, is heard even today by all the police officers. Border protection and humanitarianism. In border protection, all our border protection army, BSF, Jawans, everyone is facing the same thing. Insurgency as internal war and war ethics and human rights. This is what we are talking. Insurgency, the Naxalite insurgency, left extremism, Marxist extremism. And there you say, after all, they are our people. Who are these Naxalites? Our own family members. When we say family members, you remember Arjuna, right? They are all my family members, my gurus, my brothers and sisters, my cousins. Yes. All these insurgency people, they are all your brothers. They are all your friends. Right? But you face this problem every day. And when you face this development and ecology also, the same. In the Indic circles also, there were recently many posts, in email posts. They said, Modi is going after development, not caring for ecology. Ecology is going bad. Ecology is going bad. Modi is not caring for ecology. If he cares for ecology, What is this ecology? No development. He is going in an old way, protecting only trees and rivers. He is not developing industry. Nothing is coming out. No growth rate. Growth rate has gone from 7.1 to 5. All this. So these are common problems. Yudhishthira is saying about the same. Then he is saying, oh Kshatriya life, oh ruler's life, oh Raja life. Raja life is so difficult. If I do ecology, they say you are not developing. If I say war ethics and human rights, they say you are not controlling insurgency. If I say humanitarianism, you are not protecting the borders. If I say human rights, you are not protecting law and order. If vice versa, if I say law and order, human rights violation. Right? That is with which we are ending the theme, and then all those waiting for Mahabharata, only Mahabharata from now onwards. Okay? From there we will go to the third theme. This is just to show how relevant the whole discussion of war and peace is. So, in the morning we already started this discussion whether Mahabharata is a clarion call for war or a song of peace. Is it anti-war book? Let us see the structure of the book, how the book is begun. Let us see the beginning and the end. Beginning, how did it begin? The rishis sitting around the Sutta, the Pauranika, they asked him. He said, I will narrate to you a story called Mahabharata story. It is the story of a war. This war was fought on Shamanta Panchaka land with 18 akshauhinis of soldiers. Then immediately the rishis asked him, Sir, what is meant by Shamanta Panchaka? What is meant by akshauhini? You have to see the structure of these books like Mahabharata or Bhagavata or any Itihasa or Purana. The books are always structured as conversations. There is a narrator character, there are audience. And this narrator character gives some leading statement, audience raise questions. The questions raised by audience always represent our own questions. For example, if somebody tells us in the hall that on Shamanta Panchaka, 18 akshauhinis of soldiers fought the war, immediately, usually our question also is this, Sir, what is Shamanta Panchaka? What is akshauhini? The same question which we get is made to be put by the audience there. The Shaunaka and other rishis, they asked the Sutta Pauranika, what is meant by Shamanta Panchaka? And then he says, Shamanta Panchaka is called Shamanta Panchaka. Panchaka is 5, group of 5. It is called Shamanta because it is glowing in red color. Shamanta means glowing in red color. Panchaka, 5 pieces of land. Why is it glowing in red color? It is all filled with blood. Where did the blood come from? Parashurama brought the blood. Whose blood it is? He killed Kshatriyas by going 21 times all around the earth, and he brought the blood. Why Parashurama has to bring the blood of Kshatriyas? Because one Kshatriya called Kartavirya Arjuna killed his father called Jamadagni, and he was very angry with that. He killed all the Kshatriyas, brought the blood, created the Shamanta Panchaka. That is 5 tanks of reservoirs of blood. Why should he do that? He invited all his Pitar Devatas, ancestral spirits, and said, drink the blood. And giving all this as Tarpana. Parashurama, after all, was a Brahmin. So his ancestors are also Brahmin. They are not cannibals. They don't drink human blood. They don't drink actually blood of any animal. They are vegetarians. So they all got disgusted and shouted at Parashurama and said, what is this? You are offering blood to us. It's not correct. Don't do this. See, if one Kshatriya committed something wrong, killing all the other Kshatriyas is absolutely wrong. Don't be so angry. Control your anger. To control your anger, go and do tapas. Then Parashurama went to tapas. The question was not about Parashurama. It was not about his anger. It was not about how his anger resulted in something disgusting. The question was only about Shamanta Panchaka, the word, etymology of the word, why it was created. As an answer, this story is narrated there. Then, Akshauhini, they explain, it is not relevant here, so I am not going into the details, how Akshauhinis are formed and all that. Then gradually, the story goes to Uttanka Upakhyana. Uttanka was taught by his guru in Mantra Shastra. Anima, Garima, Laghima, all these siddhis, 8 siddhis were taught to him. And at the end of his course, his guru said, your Guru Patni, my wife, is going to sit in a yajna where he needs certain kundalas, earrings, that are there with Paushya. The parva is called Paushya Parva for this reason. He goes, Uttanka goes to Paushya, the king, and on the way, he gets many visions. There is a huge bull on which a man is sitting, and he makes Uttanka to eat the defecation of that animal, and he eats it, goes to Paushya. Paushya says, you can directly go to my wife's building, she will give you the earrings, but she is not visible to impure people. Uttanka goes there, he doesn't find her, he comes back and thinks, why am I impure? Then he washes his mouth, goes back, then he finds her and she gives the kundalas. He comes to Paushya, he says, please be my guest and I will give you feeding. He eats, but in the feeding there is a hare. So Uttanka gives a curse to him, saying, you did not locate the hare inside the rice as if you are a blind person. So become blind. And those days Rajas were also having supernatural powers. So Paushya gave curse back to Uttanka. He said, be issueless, don't have children. Uttanka was very unhappy for getting this curse. And Paushya's wife warned Uttanka that these kundalas are sought after by Takshaka, a snake. So be very careful. But Uttanka was not careful. When he wanted to wash his mouth in a tank, he kept the kundalas somewhere and got into the tank. Takshaka immediately stole the earrings and went into a hole inside the earth. Because Uttanka had the anima, mahima, etc. powers, he became very small and went inside the hole and he used all the Naga mantras and controlled all the snakes. Then there appeared a horse. The horse said, you blow air in my ears. He blew and that sent fire all over the horse's body. That same fire continued into the Nagaloka. All the snakes got hurt. So then the Nagaraja, the king of them, came and said, what do you want, sir? He said, I want the kundalas. They gave the kundalas, he goes back. But when he remembered that it was already time for the yajna, he told the horse, I am worried that I am late to the yajna. The horse said, you sit on me, and horse took him there. The yajna was completed successfully. The guru said, okay, very good, but why were you late to the yajna? Then Uttanka said, sir, this is what happened. On all my way, I had visions like this. So what are the meanings of these visions? Guru said that bull was Airavata. The man sitting on that was Indra. The defecation that you saw is Amrita. He explained the symbolism of this. Guru explained the symbolism. So this Amrita, he ate Amrita, so he should not be impure. But why was he impure? Why was he not able to see Paushya's wife? If it is Amrita? Any answer? At the time of eating, he did not know that it was Amrita. At the time of eating, he considered to be defecation only, fecus only. So, you are pure or impure depending on what you think about what you are eating. It does not depend on what it actually is the message. Huh? Faith. It's all about how you look at things. What? Yeah, but that's a little further. But at least, see, this is a message that you have. We always get these doubts. So, I went into the temple without taking bath. Was I all right? Then at the time of going inside the temple, if you did not have the feeling of impurity, you were completely all right. But if you think, I did not take bath, I am impure, I am going into the temple, with that feeling if you go, you are impure. Okay, so that message is there, and many such explanations he goes on giving, the Guru goes on giving. And now the Shishya understands that if I learn Mantra Shastra, when I utter mantras, there will be supernatural visions. I have to interpret them. Why did not the Guru tell all these things before the course, before he had these visions? Because if he gives this knowledge before, the Shishya might think that he is imagining all these things. Only when they actually happen, if the Guru interprets, then he thinks, okay, they will really happen to me. And then at the end of all this, the Guru says, your course is complete. You can now leave. Is this good story? The teaching method those days was practical. You have to get the vision, then only it is interpreted. And for Mantra Shastra, once that kind of interpretation is done, the course is over. Then only the course is over. The Shishya leaves. Shishya comes and stands outside the Guru's house. Okay, now I am free, I can go anywhere. But the Takshaka, I can't forget that fellow. He delayed me and the Guru asked me, why were you delayed? He said, I will kill this fellow. I will kill this Takshaka. I will not leave him. And how can I kill him? I don't want to kill only this Takshaka. I want to kill all the snakes. The 30 snakes. I want to kill every one of them. And he thought, if I have to perform such a yajna in which I can kill all the snakes, I need a lot of money. Who has money? The Emperor of India at that time, Janamejaya, he has enough money. So I have to go and make him perform this yajna. How will he agree to perform this yajna? Why would anyone kill snakes just for the sake of it? He remembered that Janamajaya's father Parikshit was killed by a snake. He thought, let me tell him, this Takshaka only killed your father Parikshit, then he will get angry. Then I will make him vengeant about all the snakes and he will perform. He went there, instigated him to perform Sarpa Yaga. It is called Sarpa Yaga. Everyone who knows Mahabharata knows Sarpa Yaga. The first part of Mahabharata has Sarpa Yaga. That Sarpa Yaga is performed, and as part of that, mantras are being uttered. There was one mantra inviting Takshaka. Takshakaya Swaha, there is a lot of debate about if Takshakaya Swaha, if I am giving offer to Takshaka, why should Takshaka come down? It was discussed lots of time, but Takshaka was invited. But this Takshaka was very clever, like Harshad Mehta. You know Harshad Mehta? What he did is, he involved all the big people in his crime. When Harshad Mehta was caught, he said all of them were also involved. Then they were all trying to protect themselves. In the process, they protected him. What this Takshaka did is, he caught hold of the Simhasana of Indra. When he was invited, Indra's Simhasana started moving. Then Indra started saying, hey, my Simhasana is going. And then he invited a rishi called Astika and said, please protect my Simhasana. Then Astika went down to Takshaka and Udanka and Janamejaya. And he told Udanka, this is very bad. One Takshaka committed something against you, that too already your earrings have come back. What is the fun in killing all the snakes? This is not fair for sages. Your sages have to have no anger at all. So stop this. Because Astika was a respected sage, Utanka agreed, Sarpayaga was stopped, Takshaka was saved, and all the snakes were also saved. Then comes the Ruru story. While narrating this, the stories are structured in such a way in Mahabharata that when this is being narrated, the narrator says, Astika stopped Uttanka in the same way as Sahasrapada stopped Ruru. Then automatically curiosity is created in the audience. Who is this Sahasrapada? Who is Ruru? Then he narrates the story of Ruru and Sahasrapada. I already told you part of Ruru's story, Pramadvara, getting killed by snakes. He gives away part of his longevity, but he remembers, I lost my longevity because of the snake fellow. He actually bit my lover, Pramadvara. So let me kill all the snakes. He takes a stick and goes on killing all the snakes in the forest. At one point, there was a snake, very small snake called Dundubha. He was going to kill it. Immediately turned into a sage. And the sage called Sahasrapada comes out of the snake and says, Ruru, you are from Bhrugu Vamsha. That is why your very darshana removed my shapa. I am a sage, Sahasrapada. Due to shapa, I was living as a Dundubha snake. See, your very darshana removed my shapa. You are such a great person, should not have this much of anger. You should not be killing all the snakes like that and lose all your powers. Then Ruru stopped it. In the same way, Astika stopped Uttanka is explained in the story. And Janamejaya actually at that time was performing another yajna, Shantika yajna. Why was he performing that Shantika yajna? Janamejaya thought that such a big war was fought on Shamanta Panchaka area, Kurukshetra area. We know that on the roads also, if a big accident takes place, people are always afraid that that area becomes accident prone because of the spirits of the dead people. Those spirits of the dead people always throw the vehicles and they get into accidents is the belief. So they commit some shanti there so that the evil spirits go away. So Janamejaya also believed that so many people all died at Kurukshetra war, so I have to perform some Shantika Yajna so that all the evil goes away, that place becomes pure. For that he went in search of a sage, he brought him and he was performing the Yajna. And in Yajna they invite all the gods and goddesses, Devis and Devatas, and when they come they brought their pet dogs also along with them. Sarama was one of the pet dogs. And he had a child called Sarameya, a divine puppy. A divine dog and divine puppy was there. And these divine entities, Indra and all these gods, they are not visible to people like us for our naked eye. They are visible to Janamejaya, his brothers Ugrasena and Bhimasena. They also were able to see. Because they were able to see Indra and Vayu and all the Devatas, they were able to see the dog and the puppy also. And this dog, because it was invited there for yajna only, all the food offerings which were given to Devis and Devatas, it was also eating. This puppy was also eating. But this Ugrasena and Bhimasena did not have this knowledge that because they are divine entities, they can eat. They threw stones on it. This puppy there, it got hurt and it went and told its mother. The mother came and gave a curse to Ugrasena, Bhimasena and Janamejaya also. Janamejaya got afraid and he performed another Shantika Yajna to get out of this shapa. These are the beginning stories. Beginning and the end, I told, beginning stories are all these. Please think for yourself, what are the common themes of all these stories? Hmm? Revenge. Correct. Revenge is the common theme. Parashurama revengefully killed all the Kshatriyas, but there is another common theme. Somebody comes, says, this is wrong. You are angry with one person, you are killing everyone else. This is bad. Don't do that. Ancestral spirits told this to Parashurama. Astika told this to Uttanka. Sahasrapada told this to Ruru. Right? So all these narratives, it is all beginning with these narratives, and there is another narrative where one dog is hurt and the dog curses back. Again, violence. Dog in its curse says the same. Violence is very bad. You should not hurt helpless creatures like this. Okay. So, Mahabharata is begun by these narratives. Does it have any implication for the actual main story of Mahabharata? Any commonness? In Mahabharata also, there is revenge. Duryodhana was killed. Pandavas had revenge against Kauravas. It is all revengeful only. All war is basically revengeful. And 18 Akshohinis of soldiers got killed because of the wrong committed by one person called Duryodhana. Okay. You know what happens in the end? Ashwathama becomes so angry for the death of his father, Dronacharya, that he becomes reckless and he doesn't even remember what he is doing. He is totally in a trance of anger, unconsciously anger, and he kills Upapandavas. Upapandavas are the children of all the Pandavas. When they were sleeping in a tent, he goes on killing, he is in a killing spree, and finally he applies Brahmashiro Namaka Astra. Brahmashiro is the name, Namaka Astra. It is such a powerful Astra that with that power, it can destroy the whole earth. And Arjuna looks at this and gets angry and applies the same Astra. Both these Astras are traveling in the sky. Vyasa and Sri Krishna jump and stop both the Astras. And they ask Ashwathama and Arjuna to withdraw the Astras. Ashwathama says, I cannot. I have only the ability to apply the Astra. I do not know how to withdraw. I don't have the ability. Arjuna immediately withdraws the Astra. So, the fetus in the womb of Uttara, Parikshit, is saved. Actually, the Terminator movie is created only after this formula. The famous English movie Terminator, they used this formula of Parikshit being saved by Krishna and Vyasa, and they created the Terminator story. So now this Parikshit is saved, and then Krishna and Vyasa tell Ashwathama and Pandavas that enough is enough. Destruction has happened a lot. Stop this war. Elimination of all the enemies completely is not perfectly correct. We should stop at some point. Let us stop here. One Duryodhana committed wrong and you are killing everyone else. This is not correct. So is there a common theme? One person committing wrong, you becoming revengeful, killing everyone belonging to that group, haunting, being on a killing spree. It is there already in the beginning. So in all these beginning narratives, somebody is coming and giving a message that this is wrong. Don't do this. Revengefulness is not correct. Vengeance is not correct. So this beginning and the end both have this message of don't be so revengeful, don't be so angry that you destroy everything and completely destroy the earth. and your war goes to such an extreme that it is completely destructive. Right? So, the structure of the book is as though it is giving you a message of anti-war. Don't go for war. But is that just anti-war? It's not saying don't kill anyone. It's just saying it should not be to such an extreme angle. All the stories are saying, okay, if Takshaka has done, kill Takshaka. If Parashurama has done, the Kartavirya Arjuna has done, Parashurama has to kill only Kartavirya Arjuna. If some snake has done, Ruru has to kill only that snake. So, complete anger, extreme anger is bad is what is the message in all the beginning stories. So, structure of the book is giving you an indirect message of what is the message of the book, whether it is anti-war or, and then war parvas. During the war parvas also, at every step, strategies for the war are laid, formations are laid, everything is done, but at every step, destruction is avoided. Extreme destruction is avoided. And people keep, for example, Bhishma instructs moksha through Shanti Parva, during the Shanti Parva. And Sri Krishna instructs Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. So, moksha is parallelly being discussed during Yuddha Parvas also, during Bhishma Parva, Shanti Parva. Everywhere you are getting the Vedanta discussion parallelly. So, that's another part of structure of the book. And post-war Parvas, if you look at post-war Parvas, Stri Parva has all the wailing of women. So, that gives you a message that war is bad, how bad the war is and all that. So, it is also giving a message against the war. It looks as though the book is not pro-war. It looks as though the book is anti-war. It is saying wars are bad, don't lead to war, don't commit such a big violence, all this. You follow me? Is it not? Mahabharata looks to be an anti-war book. Then, so Parashurama, Sarama, Ruru, Uttanka, all the common themes we have covered. Then in Udyoga Parva, I am going to go into the details of that. I am going to read out those shlokas. In Bhagavad Dhyana Parva, all the words of Yudhishthira are against war only. In Bhagavad Dhyana Parva, Yudhishthira's message to Krishna is, please stop the war at any cost. We don't want the war. And while asking Krishna to stop the war, he explains in several different ways why war is bad, why revengefulness is bad, why vengeance is bad. All shlokas, all the verses of Yudhishthira in Bhagavad Dhyana Parva are explanations of why war is bad only. Okay? Then Stri Parva's wailing is also against war only. Then if you go to Udyoga Parva, there are Draupadi, Sahadeva and Sri Krishna. All the three are in favor of war only. When actually in Bhagavad Dhyana Parva what happens is, it starts all with Dharmaraja, Yudhishthira. He argues against war, and then Bhima supports him, Arjuna supports him, Nakula talks midway between, then Sahadeva stands up. And Sahadeva says, these are all fools. Those who are asking not to fight are all fools. He is such a bad fellow, he is such a villain, Duryodhana. We have to go and beg him for a portion of our kingdom? No, not at any cost. We have to fight. War is only the best way. Even if you want to go Sri Krishna there with a negotiation, with a message, give the message that we are allowing them to have the half land. Don't ask for half land. You understand? There is one piece of land, whole land. Krishna is going to ask, please give half of the land to us. Sahadeva is saying, we are keeping half of the land with you, you say that way. And he says, if he doesn't agree, tell him that we are going to go for war. That should be the message. And immediately Satyaki stands up and says, yes, this is what Sahadeva's words are correct. We have to immediately go for war. Immediately all the soldiers in the court stand up and say, this is correct, this is correct. Satyaki is correct, Sahadeva is correct, and all that. You have any contemporary parallel to this? Sahadeva, Satyaki, all the soldiers. Whenever any incident happens from the Pakistan side, some bomb explosion, some incident, some violent incident, immediately all over the country, why are these people leaving that Pakistan all alone? They are not attacking Pakistan. There is one series of bomb explosions in some city, immediately is it not the comment? Don't people say this? Yes, we have to immediately attack them. Still these fellows always say, we are for peace, we are for negotiations. You see, after every violent incident, after 2-3 days, the Prime Minister or some official responsible from the union government says, yes, this is a very bad incident, but we are still for negotiations. We are still going for negotiations. We are waiting for negotiations. Immediately there is such an anger developed in all the society. People keep saying, see, even now these people after so many people getting killed, they are all for negotiations only. So this popular feeling, this popular development in the society is represented by Sahadeva, Satyaki and all the soldiers. Elite in the group, Dharmaraja, Bhima, Arjuna, who matter. Actual leaders, actual king, Yudhishthira. In Bhagavad Dhyana Parva, Yudhishthira is called king only because he has already returned from Aranya and Ajnatavasa. He has got his kinghood already, so everyone addresses him as king. So the king is deciding that we have to avoid war. Bhima is supporting him, Arjuna is supporting him, government is for negotiations. But common public like Sahadeva, Satyaki, all the soldiers, all the members of the court, they are for war. Common theme, even today it is the same. Government keeps saying we are for negotiations, people keep saying we have to go for war. And why Sahadeva, Satyaki and soldiers only are made to say that? Vyasa wants to tell us that only immature people talk that way. All those who say that we have to immediately attack Pakistan, all those who want to stop negotiations, avoid negotiations, Vyasa wants to say are like Sahadeva, the youngest, the immature fellow in the whole team. And Satyaki, who is like Bajrang Dal, always, Shiv Sena also, all the time whenever there is attack, Shiv Sena comes and says, hey, why are you not attacking Pakistan? Satyaki. All the common public. So the message seems to be from Vyasa that the responsible people like Dharmaraja, the Yudhishthira, the responsible people like Bhima and Arjuna, they talk responsibly. They know why war has to be avoided. They know why negotiations are very important. They know why avoiding war is responsible thinking and warmongering is irresponsible thinking. That is the message. And in Bhishma Parva, there is this Bhagavad Gita that brings the whole balance. One person says, I want to run away from the war. Krishna says, no, you have to fight the war. It is all through Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Dhyana Parva. It is Sri Krishna who says, war is going to be there, be prepared for war. War is going to be there, be prepared for war. He repeatedly keeps saying. Duryodhana is going to come for only war. Don't expect him to accept your negotiation for peace, he says. But it is the same Sri Krishna who says in Bhagavad Gita that don't run away from the war field, you have to fight here. So now you have the whole message together. In majority portions, it is being said, don't be revengeful, don't be angry, avoid war, and Stree Parva is showing how war is bad. But at the same time, if war comes, if war is forced on you, if the enemy forces the war on you, in spite of all your efforts to avoid it, then don't run away from it. Fight. It is your responsibility to fight. You are a soldier. You are a king. You are on the side of the government. So keep on negotiating. Keep on saying that we are not running away from the negotiation table. Tell America, tell the whole global powers that we are not warmongers. We are prepared for negotiations even at this moment of Pakistan's bad doing, civilianous actions. But if the war is forced, do surgical strikes. Do whatever you can. If they behead your soldiers, behead their soldiers. If they kill one civilian here, kill their civilians. Do whatever they do. In Vidura's message to Dhritarashtra, there is a statement, whatever the enemy does, do the same to him. That message is also inbuilt. So, the whole message, structure of the book is such that avoiding war and going for war are balanced together. In the previous theme that we were discussing, we were able to see how there is a balance between violence and non-violence. How non-violence is first preference, ahimsa paramo dharma, it is the first preference, but war is also acceptable as a last resort. War is a last resort, but when you tried everything to avoid war, if war is forced on you, don't run away from the war, is the message of the book. That is what comes out from the structure of the book. So, if you are unhappy that Mahabharata is asking you to negotiate with Pakistan, dialogue with Pakistan, I can't help it, Mahabharata is doing that. What can I do? If Mahabharata is making you look like Sahadeva, if Mahabharata is making you look like Satyaki or the soldiers in the court, what can I do? It is Mahabharata is doing that. If you have a desire in your heart that Pakistan, that fellow we have to hate, then if you think Mahabharata is going against you, I can't help, it is going against you. See, partition was done by the British and Jinnah. Your geography is such that the same country is divided on either sides of you. Okay? There is the same country on the east and the west. And that country's planes, war planes, have to be allowed to pass across your geography, your land. Is it safe? Is it strategically okay for you? The war planes are allowed because the same country, they have to always go. They can drop a bomb or a missile anytime on your land. You have to allow that only because it is the same country on either sides. One country on either sides of a sovereign country, is it an acceptable philosophy? Tell me. Is it an acceptable proposal? The same country, two parts on either sides of a sovereign land? So, the only solution was to separate. But how can you separate? How can you go and tell East Pakistan, go get separated? Or can you go to ENO and say, please separate, the same country is on either sides, we don't want it like this? There was already a war, Mujibur Rahman was already leading. So, that Bangla liberation movement was already happening. So we used this opportunity to liberate Pakistan, East Pakistan. That was a legitimate activity, right? Pakistan keeps quoting this and keeps saying that is why we supported Khalistan. That is why we supported Jammu and Kashmir. Is there such a justification for Pakistan? The justification that we have, that two parts of the same country on either sides of the sovereign country, their warplanes going over us. A similar justification, is it there for Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab? Will Punjab or Jammu Kashmir create a situation for Pakistan that our warplanes will be going over Pakistan? No. Right? So, when there is a legitimate requirement for war for you, don't hesitate to go for war, is the message in Mahabharata also. You understand? But there is no parallel for East Pakistan kind of situation here. The only parallel here is negotiations and war. Today, the common public are discussing only these things. Why does union government always keep saying, we are at the negotiation table, we are for peace, we are to avoid war, we are not warmongers. And as common citizens, our reaction is also, this union government is useless. They always say negotiations, dialogue, peace and all that. This is very bad. I am not saying whether you are wrong or right. I am only saying what is Mahabharata telling you. What is Mahabharata telling you? If you say we are always at the negotiations table is bad, you are Sahadeva. You are Satyaki. You are soldiers. Does Mahabharata say Sahadeva is bad? Huh? What is it saying? Sahadeva is the youngest one. Immature fellow. So it is only saying that you are immature. If you are saying go for war, Mulayam Singh always used to say, though he was anti-BJP, when the war was there, he said we should have Kargil war. During Kargil war, Mulayam Singh said we should have crossed the border. We should have done this, we should have done that, we should have all this. Sahadeva. Mulayam Singh is Sahadeva. Whoever keeps saying such things is, Mahabharata is saying Sahadeva. Satyaki. Krishna, I will come to Krishna. Gradually, now we go into the text. Why Krishna says, war is going to be there, be prepared, be prepared. Why he is saying, we will go into diplomacy section, then we will realize. Okay? I will only give you an example, then you will understand. Most of them are your students here. You are not prepared for the exams. So you wanted your leader, student leader, to get the examinations postponed. Your student leader comes to you and says, don't worry, Vice Chancellor is very close to me, or the Chief Minister is very close to me. I can get the examinations postponed. Throw away all your books, keep enjoying, go to watch movies. He goes, and the Vice Chancellor, though is a relative of him, doesn't listen to him, doesn't accept his proposal. Examinations are conducted on right time. What do you do to this fellow? Huh? He will get black and blue, right? If you did not have the capacity to get the examinations postponed, why did you ask us to throw away the books and watch movies and all that, you say, right? So, what would have been his best policy at that time? He should have told all of you, see, I will try my best. I will try to convince the Vice Chancellor. I will try to use my influence with the Chief Minister. But you have to keep preparing. Please don't throw away books. Don't watch movies. Be preparing. I will come back by evening. Till then you keep studying. In the evening, when I come back, if I say the examinations are postponed, then only throw away your books and go and watch movies. Till then, keep studying, is what you have to say. Krishna was going to Duryodhana. These people were saying, stop the war, stop the war. If Krishna would have told them, don't worry, I am Krishna after all. Avatar. If I of all the people, if I go, how can't Duryodhana listen? He will definitely accept. Don't worry, throw away all your weapons, keep enjoying, have Shakira dance. And this fellow goes. Krishna goes. You know how Duryodhana is, he never accepts. Krishna comes back and with a sorry face comes and says, I am so sorry, he did not accept. What would have happened to Krishna? Of all the people, Bhima would first of all go. He takes his gada and hits Krishna. You should have told us this first time when you started. Then at that time you were boasting about yourself that I am after all Avatara, I am Krishna, I can convince Duryodhana. You see now what happened? In the maza that we were doing, we lost all our war mood. We are not yet prepared. We have not collected the astras and shastras. We have not collected the kings. We have not collected the soldiers. We have not even thought of the formations that we have to apply. All the udyoga, all the effort was stopped because of you. So the responsibility of any duta is to first of all stop the people from thinking that the negotiation will be successful. Right? That is what Krishna was doing. Many people interpret this to be Krishna's interest in war. This is a wrong interpretation. Krishna is the arbitrator there. Arbitrator should never promise the success of his arbitration. Arbitrator always has to keep his party prepared for the worst. Arbitrator has always got the responsibility of keeping his party to be prepared for a failure of the arbitration. Then only he will be called the best arbitrator. That is, in the next sections we are going to go for diplomacy, negotiations and all that. At that time we are going to discuss all these details of what are the responsibilities of an arbitrator, what are the responsibilities of a mediator. Krishna was fulfilling his responsibility of mediator. He was not a warmonger. This is the wrong interpretation. In popular understanding, always people say, during Bhagavad Dhyana Parva, Sri Krishna always said, there will be war, because he wanted war. He wanted war because he was Bhagavan. He was Avatara. He wanted the end of Dwapara Yuga. He wanted Kali Yuga to come. That is why he wanted everyone to get killed. That is why he was saying, there will be war, there will be war. No, that is not what is being shown in Bhagavad Dhyana Parva. Krishna is being shown as a responsible arbitrator there. That is the responsibility of the arbitrator. That is why he was saying that. But if you see the actual shlokas there, Krishna repeatedly keeps saying that don't worry, I will work only for stopping the war. Repeatedly he keeps saying. Because he is being sent by Yudhishthira and his party only to stop the war. He should say that actually I am accepting your message. I will fulfill your mission. The mission that you are giving me, I am for it only. And because he is cautioning them that his negotiation may not be successful, there is a scope for misunderstanding on the part of the party that is sending him. They might think that this fellow is a warmonger. We should not have selected this fellow as an arbitrator at all. He is repeatedly saying there will be war, there will be war. Definitely he is going to go there and say something to make you Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra angry, and he will invite anger by wrong words, they might think. So, for avoiding that kind of misunderstanding, he keeps repeatedly saying, I will work for only stopping war. I will work only for stopping war. But be prepared for the worst. Be prepared for the failure of my negotiation also.
Typically in Hindi films, the police come only after the hero catches or smashes the villain, right? So in the previous slide, in the beginning and the end of Mahabharata, there was a story of Parshuram who killed all the Kshatriyas, and then there was Ruru who started killing all the snakes one by one later on to avenge this. So after Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas, somebody comes and tells him, wait. After Ruru kills a lot of snakes, somebody comes and tells him, wait, this is not right. So do you think there's a message there? Because it's like, to be fair, it's not that, okay, the fair thing could have been possibly that if killed only that one Kshatriya who killed for Parshuram, to be fair, just killed one Kshatriya and not everybody. But he ended up killing all the Kshatriyas, and then somebody came and told him, no, this is not right. You go and do tapasya. Then even Ruru, to avenge his, he killed a lot of snakes, and then somebody comes and tells him, no, that's not right. So in that sense, isn't it a bit too late for somebody to come and tell after a lot of killing has been done?
Okay. Let me ask some questions. Pitradevatas, ancestral spirits of Parashurama, they were all there in Pitraloka. And for them to come down, a power is required. Pitradevatas cannot come all by themselves, all the time. They have no such powers at all. You have to use a mantra to invite them. For example, during Shraddha, we invite Pitradevatas. They can come all the time. Whenever they like, they should come and keep saying, hey, how are you? And go. And they should come every day and ask for breakfast. When, for example, they like dhokla, and when we cook dhokla, the Pitradevatas should come and say, hey, you cooked dhokla today? I like it, and they should come and take it away. But they are not coming, all because we are not uttering those mantras. We have to utter those mantras and use our powers to invite them. Right? Then only they can come. There is a rule. Everything doesn't happen just by itself, just like that. There is a rule and method. The Pitradevatas were invited by Parashurama through mantras. Then only they came down. When they came down only, they were able to see that he was offering all that as tarpana to them. Even if they came down, if he did not offer that as tarpana, they would not have felt such disgust. He said, drink this. Then they felt such a disgust. So, everything has a rule according to which it happens. For example, Ruru, in the case of Ruru, Sahasrapada was in Shapa. He was in a curse. He was in the form of a Dunduba snake. How can he go in the form of a Dunduba snake and talk to him? And this Dunduba snake, because of curse, was at some distant place. It was not close to Ruru. Ruru went by following every snake to that Dunduba, which was lying there. Then only, because of Bhrugu's darshana, Bhruguvamsha Bhargava darshana, that is Ruru's darshana, the curse was removed and Sahasrapada could come out of it and then can speak. There is no other way Sahasrapada can come and speak to him. He is under curse. You understand? And Astika was a Mahamuni, he was in tapas. He did not even use his supernatural powers to know that some Sarpayaga was happening somewhere. He was minding his own tapas. It was Indra who disturbed his tapas and said, oh sir, please come and rescue. Then only Astika had to go there. Okay? And even in the case of police or court, usual realistic way of happening is, unless you file a complaint, they don't come. They say, it was not complained to us. We don't have a complaint on record. Court, you ask them, such bad things are happening, you are not reacting, usually the judge says, no case was filed here. We don't have a case filed in our records. Okay? In movies, we say police come. How did the police come? Somebody complained to them. The movie doesn't show that part to you. That somebody, actually in the old movies that used to be there. That clip was also there. Somebody calls up the police. But nowadays, movie makers are thinking they know, they understand that somebody has complained and they are removing this part of the video. But usually somebody has to complain only, then only they can come.
With Ashwathama's case, where Krishna and Vedavyasa so asked him to stop. So they were there right from the beginning.
Yeah, they were, for example, Ashwathama goes to the tents where Upapandavas were sleeping. He puts the fire and Krishna and Vyasa should come and stop the fire.
Just as a,
No,
as a continue of your answer. Actually, I have...
No, realistically, let us just imagine. This Ashwathama goes and puts fire to the tents. What is the option for Krishna and Vyasa? What is the option? They should bring fire engine? Or they should use their supernatural power and say, "Jish," and the fire goes and Upapandavas are saved? Always it is the narratives in the narrations, only when the climax comes. Only when the situation goes to such an extent that the whole world is going to get destroyed. In the war, they thought it is usual that somebody is angry, somebody kills somebody, there are always fights, they say this fellow comes and does this. I have many students who are police officers. When I talk to them some other topics, I sit there, they are on their job. They keep calling people on phones, responding to calls. And when I say, oh, something very serious is happening, please go and attend, we will discuss later. Then they say, usually, sir, this is quite normal. They kill each other, they beat each other. There was an incident, sir. There was an incident, sir. Recently I was in Bengal, in Kolkata. My student is an SP there. There were many calls. He was saying, that's a vulnerable area. Please deploy force there. Yeah, I am sending 2 battalions of police there. Yeah, there one company of police has been deployed there and all that. I said, so you seem to be very busy. Please go. Let me discuss with you later. He was saying, sir, this is all common. These are happening. See, there was one person killed, they were angry, so naturally they will react and some things will happen. It is our responsibility to take care of law and order. So we are deploying force to minimize the destruction. But if I deploy force here, they will attack some other area. They will do something else. So it's quite natural.
We stopped.
Ashwathama
and even Arjun gave a counter astra, right?
Yes.
So would you consider all of them in the category of Sahadev only then? Because they did not also reason. I mean, Parshuram killed all the Kshatriyas instead of just avenging one. Were they also in the category of Sahadev, like common people?
Who? Arjuna and Ashwathama?
And Parshuram. And Ruru.
Parshuram, they were in the category of common people only. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what.
That is what Sahasrapada told Ruru. That is what Astika told Uttanka. That is what Parashurama's ancestors told Parashurama. They said, you actually are not a common man. You are a great man. Parashurama, you also come from Bhargava Vamsha. You are a great person. You should not be doing this. Actually, in Ramayana also, recently there was that discussion about Sita scolding Rama and all that. One Trashki, some Audrey Trask, she was mentioning that Sita scolded Rama, it was all male chauvinistic, pig and all that. So during that discussion also, it was to be told that Rama actually, in the same way, Brahmadeva appears according to Valmiki Ramayana, and he uses the words, you are a respectable person. You are Vishnu's avatara. You should not be doing this. Sita's words also. Sita also tells Rama that your behavior is unbecoming of a great person. You are a great person. This is unbecoming of a great person. She also uses, your question is, are they common people? Sita says exactly the same. You are behaving like a common man. You are behaving like a prakrita. Prakrita means common man only. She says, Sita says, oh Rama, you are behaving like a prakrita person. He says. So that is what Parshurama's ancestors are saying. Parshurama, originally you are a respectable person. You are a sage. You are a tapasvi, highly knowledgeable. But at this context, you are behaving like a common man. Ashwathama is also a great man. Ashwathama also became a Chiranjeevi later. Ashwathama is the son of Dronacharya. So, but at that time, out of anger, he is behaving like a common man. So, everyone, when they were advising them, they were saying, this is unbecoming of a great man. You are behaving like a common man. So, your impression that they are they like common people? Yes, at that moment, in that context, they were behaving like common people. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha in Bhagavad Gita. So that krodha, how it led to bad things. It's all discussed. So now, is it a book of war or is it a book of peace? Very complex. Very complex, right? So, if somebody wants a straightforward answer, tell me whether it is a book of war or peace. One answer, war or peace. Then it's not possible. From the morning, we have been observing that from the Sugrucha Mahimsihi, both Sugrucha Mahimsihi is there. Vedic philosophy has a balance all over. There is a balance between Rishi and Raja Dharma. There is a balance between Himsa and Ahimsa. There is a balance between Grihastha and Sannyasa. There is a balance between tribal, rural life and urban life. There is a balance between acquiring wealth and stopping wealth. So everywhere there is this balanced approach in the Vedic philosophy. That's what we see in this also. So what is the implication for statecraft? Which kind of statecraft is good? What is the message from Mahabharata? Balanced statecraft, maintain law and order, minimizing human right violation, develop the country, get involved in development, but be careful about ecology, right? Every step, Vedic philosophy is a balanced philosophy. In Jainism, you see an extreme. In permaculture, in one-star revolution of Fukuoka, everywhere you see an extreme. There is the other extreme of industrialization. There is the other extreme of wealth acquisition. But at every step, Vedic philosophy is a balanced philosophy. Whenever there is anything balanced, it looks very complex. Straightforward answers are not possible. So, if Mahabharata is very difficult to understand, Vedic philosophy is very difficult to understand, it is its nature, what can we do? So, if somebody says, it's very bad, it's not very simple, it's not very simple like saying, wear a good shirt, James 23:44. Walk straight, Matthew 43:22. This is not there. It is all such very simple things are not there in Mahabharata. Our philosophy, Vedic philosophy, Mahabharata is profound. All profound things are complex. They need a very concentrated understanding of complex things. This is an academic forum, so you have the ability and capacity to sustain, to be able to grasp complex things, so you are able to grasp. But if I were to speak in a common public, usually the question is, sir, stop all this. You tell me whether war or peace. एक बात में कह दो, ये तो एकेडमिक्स में पॉसिबल नहीं है, थोड़ा दिमाग से सोचना चाहिए, तो कॉम्प्लेक्स है, समझ लेना चाहिए, आप लोगों का कैपेसिटी है समझने में, कल कंटिन्यू करेंगे। थैंक यू।